You're listening to Business Podcasting Made Easy, the influencer's formula, where you get a roadmap to instant authority and thought leadership with a podcast that you're proud of on the IBGR network, radio network. This is episode 24. And today we're talking about how to build an audience of engaged listeners for your podcast. I'm Donna Cundy, co-founder of the IBGR network, global radio authority, podcast expert, and producer of almost 14,000 podcasts.
Hello, Donna Cundy. I'm Ben Joya, three-time international best-selling author, and my teachings have reached more than 50,000 people worldwide, all thanks to leveraging my book, or maybe more accurately, This Point books, so you can apply this same kind of stuff to your podcast. That's what we're going to be teaching you and helping you with, as well as getting your podcast done 13 minutes at a time in just 13 weeks. So remember, you can easily follow the plan, right? There is a plan at influencersformula.com. And if you want direct live support from us for your business podcast, and contact us today at ibgr.info. And hey, Henry Ford, thank you for the cars.
Right?
Tesla, I wish the engine came 80 years ago. Anyway, if everyone is moving forward together, then success takes care of itself.
Beautifully said.
Thank you. And this is a kind of mysterious quote, because what are we talking about today? Right? Welcome to the show. What are we talking about today, Donna?
Well, we are going to be talking about becoming a person. We're going to be talking about enunciation. Isn't it so funny? I just have to do a little pause here, that whenever you're talking about something that is important, it never seems to work out the right way. I don't think we've stumbled over words as much as we have when we're talking about don't stumble over words.
Oh, yeah. We're modeling behavior and response.
100%.
So we're saying that it's okay.
Yes.
Look at us stumble away.
Right. And it's yes. Okay. So become a person worth listening to by doing the unexpected.
The unexpected?
We just threw a little bit of that in there. Speak to at least a dozen or so of your ideal clients and ideal strategic partners about the podcast that you're developing. Well, that's unexpected.
What?
Talk to people about what you're doing. Now's a good time to make sure you're on the right track for content and for clients. Imagine that.
Yeah, Donna, thank you so much for bringing that up. And listeners, listen to this one, right? Don't go out there and go be like, hey, I have a podcast. Come listen to my podcast. Right? I mean, you can do that later if you want to. Right? But start with talking to your best people, your best potential clients, your best potential strategic partners, and a handful of your current and or previous best clients and strategic partners. Ask them about things like their fears, challenges, goals, frustrations, needs, dreams, like all of that kind of marketing stuff, right? Ask them that, and then clarify your content, double check your content through that lens, right? Is your podcast on track for your best people? Because you don't want to just share a message. If you're me, you don't want to just share a message, right? But you want your listeners to take some kind of action. Yes, because I want listeners to take action because it's part of my business, but more deeply, because when they take action, they can have a deeper and more profound, long-lasting transformation because we've had more time to hang out together.
So when you talk about reaching out to these people, Ben, you're saying like group messaging. You're saying a big email, put everybody's name on the email list. You're saying, blast it out. No.
I'm saying all of the above.
Okay.
I'm saying, reach out to people who you know, open the Rolodex, ask people who they know, right? Send a note to your email list.
So it's okay to do the group talking, or would you rather it be one-to-one?
Well, the conversation you'd want to be ultimately one-to-one.
Mm-hmm.
The outreach can be at, kind of any level of scale, just to get in front of your best people. Like some of it will be people you know, some of it will be people you don't know. So leverage social media. That doesn't mean you have to hammer on social media, but put a couple of requests out there like help needed. developing this
Yeah.
podcast for these kind of people.
People
You
love
know,
to help. They love to give their opinions.
totally. Yeah. And people are more apt to come help you talk about a podcast, talk about your podcast than like, hey, you want to get on a discovery call with me? Right. Like, right. Because there's that fear, that a concern that a lot of people have of it's just going to turn into a sales call.
Correct.
Right. Right. But if it's like, hey, the reason why we're going to speak, as peers and collegially is around this podcast I'm developing. And hey, you're one of the best people in my, best type of audience for my podcast. So I'd love to understand what you think about these things and how you feel about these things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. Right. Cut to the chase.
And have those conversations, because I think there's what I notice with the podcasters that we have, some that I've worked with, is this fear of, well, how will I know that this is going to resonate with people, or how do I find the people, or who am I going to talk to? And just this simple reach out of being authentic and having a conversation with somebody to ask a question like, what would be important to you? This is my area of expertise. This is the ideas that I have. What do you think? What's your opinion? And you want to be careful, I think, with opinions sometimes, because we say that they're like belly buttons. Everybody has one and not everyone should be seen or heard. But
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you,
yeah.
Donna, oh, sorry. Go ahead, please.
No, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And I want to actually take it a little bit further. And I would say, do very little on these conversations. Talk very little about yourself. Like, just 20-minute chat. Hey, we're here to have this conversation about this podcast. Thank you for agreeing to speak. I'm going to ask you these questions and I'm just going to listen. And hey, I'm going to record these, right? Just so I can be a good listener and not lose track, taking notes, right? And you don't want to take notes on
Why
these
not?
because you're not being a good listener if you're if you are taking notes. So record and transcribe. You can use recording, transcription, automatic AI software. I put the words in all different directions, but that's a great way to do that, right? Otter connects to Zoom, for example, right? You can have these conversations with people, right? And then go back there, and then you can look at several conversations worth of transcriptions, and you can look at the trends and language and
That's
desires and
beautiful.
challenges and fears and goals, right? And then, you can, and then the lens gets tighter to your best people, because you don't need, any specific number of podcast listeners to have a successful podcast, right? Somebody reminded me, like, what if you have 30 regular listeners who are all about you and your stuff, and you make an offer, or an invitation on every one of those podcasts, like, you're going to be driving high ticket business from 30 listeners.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes. And I love that you say the active listening versus passive listening. You're inviting somebody to tell you what they want. And if they give you your time at any point in time, and you're not showing up to show appreciation for that, it's not sending the right message. What I don't think. Yeah.
Beautifully said. Yeah. And one of the one of the greatest forms of appreciation and greatest gifts that we can give is listening.
Yes.
Right? Like, a lot of people don't get listened to enough in their day. Right. I've had so many of these conversations around people's books and publishing and whatnot. Right. And by the end of this series of, almost a dozen questions that I will ask people, they're like, oh my God, that was so helpful. Right. Like, and I didn't guide them in any way. I just asked them to share certain things. Right. And in sharing them, they were able to just get a whole bunch of clarity, from getting outside of their head for a moment and being able to speak truthfully around challenges and fears and, the dark, scary things sometimes.
I appreciate you say that. I'm a business coach, you're a book coach, and that's part of it. What we're taught in the coaching world is you're given 2 ears, 1 mouth. That's nothing new. I'm sure people have heard that before. But this idea of 2 ears, listen, Listen to the person in front of you. They're going to give you the gold mine of their thinking.
Yeah, beautifully said. And it's so funny how we're talking about building a podcast and we're really emphasizing listening. Being
Right.
a podcast creator
Right. Right.
and owner and developer, listen, listen, listen.
Yes, but it's about building an audience of engaged listeners, and you be the first one to engage.
Yeah.
So you model that behavior in all
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah, and the first one to listen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to yourself and to others.
Yeah.
Well, what do you need to do for this one? Start brainstorming a list of ideal clients, like you were saying, Ben, strategic partners. Brainstorm. Who do you want to work with? Reach out and schedule time to speak with them using your podcast as the reason why. That's a perfect reason why.
Totally.
Have the conversation and make sure you're recording and transcribing in AI software, like you were saying, Ben, and review the conversations for language and trends. And we're bringing this one in for a landing, bringing it home. Brainstorming your list starts to schedule the calls as soon as possible. Don't wait. Schedule one call. If one is available, schedule more, because you can, you should. We want you to schedule many.
Right.
Just do the calls. You want to wrap us up, Ben?
I sure do. Thank you for saying that, Donna. And it's so important to speak to the people and front load speaking to the people, right? Because the more data you get, the sooner, the better, right? So I recommend about 12.5 people to really, get a nice look at trends and remember that these people can become strategic partners or become clients in the future, right?
How
So
we met.
that's exactly how we met. Well said, well done, well reminded. So, hey, you who's listening right now, make sure to subscribe to the show at influencersformula.com. And if you want support from us for your business podcast, and contact us today at ibgr.info. We are wrapping up. This is how to build an engaged audience of listeners for your podcast. I said that out of order. We are coming on the heels of knowing, liking, trust, and your special sauce, the extra 12%, the instant death to your podcast, sitting behind the mic, using the voice effectively. And we wrapped it up, just like I said, with building the audience of engaged listeners for your podcast. So I'm Ben Joya with my dear friend. Over to you, Donna Kunde.
Yeah, that's me here. You're listening to, again, this is episode 24, how to speak on your podcast without sounding like you're reading a script. That was the last one, but thank you all for listening. We're going to come back again next week with some more stuff. Great podcast things, and bye for now.
Bye for now.